Okay, so good morning, everybody. Can you guys all hear me in here as well? Okay, excellent. So I'd like to welcome everyone globally as well as locally to this first instantiation of a hybrid version of our Ghatika Monthly gathering. This is something we've been doing for a few months now online, virtually, but this is the first time we're offering teachings to our local community in Crestone as well. So welcome everybody who's joined us today. I know it's a little chilly in here. We will work on that for the next session, but thank you for joining. I don't want to hog too much time because we have an awesome teacher with us here today, but just briefly, maybe a little bit about who we are. CCR is an organization that's really focused on contemplative science, understanding that most of the problems in our world really stem from our own afflicted minds, and contemplative practice can really help us address that. And so we operate what we call mind labs. You're in one of them right now. This is a center where we have very advanced practitioners going really deep in their contemplative practice and progressing along their path. Some of them are participating in research. We have a lot of scientists globally who are helping us measure the impacts of contemplative practice and share those measurements, and also work with sharing the insights of contemplatives to help understand the nature of reality, the nature of consciousness, which there's more and more appetite for in the scientific community, and I think globally. So beyond the research, we're also working on a lot of educational offerings. This is one of them. You'll see more and more coming out from this center in terms of introductory practices and advanced practices and that kind of thing. And so hopefully we'll do some more series in Crestone and globally. And, really encouraging people to go deeper in their own traditions and their own practices as well. So we'll have a variety of teachers for these sessions. Doug is going to teach today. The previous sessions we had were taught by Clara Seeger, who shared a lot of sort of deep kind of theory and science and stuff in the way that she taught about compassion and equanimity and things. I'll tell you a little bit about Doug. And so he brings a very comprehensive set of skills. Longtime teacher and deep practitioner in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Dzogchen and Gelug lineages. Also happens to have been a professional mountain guide, professional builder. He oversees all the construction here at the Hermitage very expertly, and an award-winning journalist. He's a guide for contemplatives here at our center, and also has written a wonderful biography of Theos Bernard called White Lama, which is about one of the first Westerners in Tibet in the early 20th century. So check that out. We are really delighted to have him here with us. We will have instruction. He's going to break down what we call a Ghatika. This is called the Ghatika Monthly Gathering. Ghatika is an increment of time, 24 minutes. It's sort of a Goldilocks sweet spot for meditation practice. Going to break down some introductory methods for shamatha, which is a type of practice that we do very intensely here at this Hermitage. And we'll leave time for questions, discussion at the end. So with that, I welcome Doug, our leader for today.
I think I'd better turn off this gallery view. Hello, everyone in online land. And hello, everyone here in Crestone at Miyo Samten Ling, the Manjushri Chapel here at the Center for Contemplative Research at Miyo Samten Ling. As Courtney mentioned, I'm Doug Veenhof, very delighted to be with you both online and here, our friends and neighbors and colleagues here in Crestone. As Courtney mentioned, the Ghatika, which is the title for this series of practices, is a unit of time in ancient or medieval India that was 24 minutes. So in India, there were 60 24-minute sessions rather than 24 60-minute sessions in the day. And so with this 24-minute session, what we're going to do today is I'm going to break this 24-minute session into a half Ghatika, no, a quarter Ghatika. So a multiple of, so 6 minutes, 4 6-minute sessions is 24-minute sessions. Because and by doing that, what I hope to introduce or to some of you perhaps, and reinforce to others who are familiar with this concept, is that one of the cardinal rules in progressing in shamatha practice is short, frequent sessions. And so the point of that is that you don't want to develop an aversion to your practice. And you don't want to meditate too long so that you overdo it. As Hemingway said, quit while there is still water in the well, his advice to young writers, so that you know something just happened. Did we lose connection? Oh, we're back. Let's see, I'm going to change this view again. Okay. So short, frequent sessions. So the question then is how short and how frequent? So some of the advice of Master Kamalashila, one of the great instructors in India on shamatha practice, said that up to 18 sessions per day. And then the question of how short is that you want to quit while you still want to meditate. So that's Hemingway's advice, back to that. Quit while you still want to meditate. So it's possible that for people who are new to practice, that 24 minutes is actually too long, that you shouldn't be meditating at that length, because what you're doing is just sitting with a distracted mind or a dull mind. And so what you want to do is to find a length of your meditation session, especially in the beginning, that is not too long and not too short. So in that Goldilocks length of time. But what you want to be very careful about is just sitting there and letting your mind wander and thinking that that is meditation, and that beginning to be comfortable with that. And that becomes a habit then of your approach to meditation. So I really think that it's very beneficial to start with a 6-minute session to introduce and reinforce that idea that 6 minutes is actually a very good length of time to meditate, and then naturally increase the length of your sessions when you can maintain a balanced mind that is balanced between clarity and stability. And so what we are also going to do with these 4-minute or 4 6-minute sessions is introduce a range of practices that are being done here at Miyo Samten Ling. And I would guess that right now, among the meditators that are in long retreat right now, that most of the people at this very moment are doing one of these 4 meditations that we're going to be doing. And this progression of meditations that I'll be introducing then with these short, frequent sessions is going to cover the range of shamatha practice, from shamatha with a sign to shamatha without a sign. So it's very ambitious you're not going to master all of these 4 practices unless you are already a master in this 1-hour session today. But what I am hoping, and my point really in introducing the whole sweep of practices to you, when some of you may just be interested in learning the basics of meditation this morning, is in this view from 30,000 feet, or maybe it's more of a table of contents, that you see exactly what is possible, the range of practices, and that you can see then the context where your practice fits in to this whole range right now. And also, I think, get a sense of, frankly, exhilaration, seeing the sweep of practices and what you might be doing as you progress along the path. And there's no reason that you have to wait until you have mastered one of these practices before you move on to the next and just experiment with it and just enjoy it. So the first of all, shamatha practice is a genre of meditation practice. Shamatha in Sanskrit, shine in Tibetan, commonly translated as quiescence or calm abiding. But this is a practice that is fundamental to all other Buddhist meditation practices. And it really is one that probably is not emphasized nearly enough in most of the traditions now. And so I feel very fortunate that in this particular tradition, and here at Miyo Samten Ling, Lama Alan Wallace has really emphasized this. And with the encouragement of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, is really making this a fundamental aspect of our practices here at Miyo Samten Ling, because as almost every commentator in the shamatha tradition and most of Buddhist traditions emphasize that shamatha is absolutely essential for really achieving the realizations of all the other paths and stages along the way. And so this shamatha practice is all about developing single-pointedness and a balanced mind that is a balance of vivid awareness and stability. So we're going to begin our 4 sessions with a shamatha with a sign practice, and that is breath meditation. So the Buddha recommended breath meditation for people who have a discursive mind or whose mind is really their chief distraction really is discursive thinking. So a conceptual mind that is just ruminating constantly. And that is, I think, a description of the minds of most modern people in our developed worlds. So what we are running right now is a worldwide experiment, it seems, on what is the effect on the human mind of 24-hour media connection and constant stimulation. And I think that most of what we are seeing in the psychological reports is that it's not working out very well. The increase of depression, anxiety, and all of the other dysfunctions really that are what, in our perspective anyway, can be traced to this degradation of attention and an unbalanced mind. And so the breath meditation is a very good one to start with. When we are doing shamatha with a sign, what we are doing is using selective, exclusive, focused attention. So we are choosing an object to focus our attention on, and then consciously and with volition, directing our attention to a chosen object, and then training to sustain our attention on the object that we have chosen to direct our attention to. So the breath is a very good object to choose because it is constant enough so that we can tell whether we are on our object or not, or whether our mind has become distracted. And so you could choose a rock or a stick, which is in the Mahamudra tradition and in Dzogchen tradition also. That is the first of the objects that you choose, an inanimate object, and you can just focus on this inanimate object. But I think the experience of many people is that it's because it's dead, lifeless, mechanical object, that you can lose interest in it very quickly, and it doesn't really encourage continuity of your attention. So the beauty of the breath is that it is constant enough so that you can tell whether you're on your object or you've become distracted. But at the same time, it's ever changing. Every moment of the breath is different. So it's living, and it really keeps your attention engaged. So we're going to follow the advice of the Buddha and start with the breath meditation. And so with the breath, what we are trying to do is to maintain a continuity of our engagement with the tactile sensations of the breath. And we are going to place our attention voluntarily at the tip of the nostrils. So within the nostrils here, you'll find sensations of the air moving in, differences of temperature from the inhalation and the exhalation. And it's very compelling. It keeps your mind and your attention focused and engaged on these tactile sensations. So we're using what we're focusing on the breath with is bare attention on tactile sensations. So one of the common metaphors for our consciousness is our everyday consciousness is the monkey mind. And so you can think of a monkey in a room in space, a cubicle room, and there's a room or a window in each wall of the room. And the monkey is just ricocheting back and forth from one wall to another, looking out one of these windows for a short period of time. And while he is looking out of this one window, all of the other windows are not available to him. So the point of focusing on tactile sensations is that really, to the degree that you are able to focus on this one sensory field, the ruminating, wandering mind is going to go dormant to a large degree, to a very comforting degree. And so one of the ways that the Buddha describes the benefits of breath meditation is that it is like an out-of-season rainstorm in India. It brings comfort, it brings peace, it brings serenity, it's settling the dust, and it's kind of an unexpected result of not doing anything except focusing on the nature of the mind, not the nature of the mind, but actually just these tactile sensations. So in especially the Dzogchen and Mahamudra traditions, the question for not only developing shamatha, but for cultivating happiness itself is not what do I need to do to achieve happiness or what do I need to do to achieve shamatha. It is what do I need to stop doing in order to allow it to reveal itself. And so this is a fundamental aspect I'm sure that we will go into in later sessions of this approach in Dzogchen and Mahamudra of awareness that is already really the goal of all of our practice is already present in us, called Buddha nature, but that what we need to do is to unobscure it. And so what we are in the Dzogchen and Mahamudra approach to shamatha, what we want to stop doing is to stop doing distraction and dullness. So these two obscurations or obstacles, distraction and dullness, are the chief obstacles to the balanced vividness and stability that we are trying to achieve with shamatha. So what we are trying to do then is use our single-pointed focus on tactile sensations of the breath to eliminate distraction and to eliminate dullness. So there are a couple of very basic techniques involved with breath meditation. The key to stability is the exhalation. And so you consciously are relaxing and releasing distraction on the exhalation and allowing the distraction to leave your body and your mind on the exhalation and just dissolve into space. And on the inhalation, you are accentuating clarity. And this is just a natural physiological process also called vagal toning. And there's just a natural increase in the heart rate on the inhalation and a natural decrease on the exhalation. So what we are doing is by focusing on it, we are consciously accentuating that. So on the inhalation, accent the clarity. On the exhalation, accent the release and deepening of relaxation. So naturally, you are going to lose your object. You're directing your attention to the tactile sensations of the breath, but naturally, you're going to lose your focus on the chosen object, and your mind is going to go wandering. So this is like being abducted, and your attention is kidnapped, and you wake up at some point, after a while. It could be minutes, and all you can remember is not the whole train of associations that have kept you wandering, but just like waking from a dream, all you remember is the last vignette, really, of this whole series. And so what we are trying to do is, with mindfulness and with introspection, to shorten the periods of that period that our mind is wandering and return to our chosen object more and more quickly, so that eventually you are able to, with introspection, be able to determine that your mind is wandering very quickly. So as soon as your mind begins to wander, you notice it. And then, as Jason Kappa says, that the real goal of the practice of introspection and what is really needed to develop mindfulness is that you are actually able to detect distraction before it actually arises. So while it's still nascent, it's just kind of out there, quite on, outside the periphery of your consciousness, but it's still detectable. So mindfulness is what Lama Allen recently has been defining and translating as bearing in mind. But it is this continuous single-pointed engagement with an object of your choice without forgetting is really what that means. So bearing in mind our chosen object of attention, that is mindfulness. And then introspection is a really crucial element of developing mindfulness as well, because that is the quality control agent, the one that is letting you know when your mind has wandered or is about to wander, and then returns it to the chosen object. And so when you discover that your mind has wandered, the one thing reaction that you don't want to cultivate is to be a strict dad and start lecturing your mind, or a dog owner who pulls on the leash and tries to, and says, sit, stay, because you're just going to not have fun, for one thing, and it's not going to work. So what you want to do is to be kind to yourself and gently return to your chosen object. So first of all, what you do is when you discover that your mind has wandered, release your grasp on the chosen object, or on the unchosen object. So release on the distracting object. So you release, and then this is something that is really helpful. You rejoice for a moment, and you rejoice in your refound lucidity. And so instead of beating yourself up or criticizing yourself, just take a moment of rejoicing. And this actually has a very fundamental reinforcing approach to shortening the length of time that you're distracted, because you're realizing that this is really important to me, this is really valuable, and this is enjoyable, the sense of lucidity. Then you return to your chosen object, and then you relax ever more deeply on the next exhalation. So let's give that a try. So that's a lot of words to begin with. And so for 6 minutes, I'm not going to give you guided instructions during the meditation, but just try to recall all of that and put it into practice for 6 minutes. So the first is a very critical thing that really should say, because it is so important to our practice, is that relaxation is absolutely critical, a fundamental foundation for developing shamatha. So you want to have a comfortable seated position, and you want to not be striving. So you want to be relaxed, both physically and mentally. So what we're trying to do then is to, there are 3 balances that we need to cultivate to develop shamatha. So the first is to relax while maintaining the clarity of mind that you begin your meditation with. So our minds are going to be clear when we begin our meditation, but there is a tendency for the mind, because of a lack of stimulation, for the mind to become dull and drowsy and lax as the meditation session progresses. So this is why 24 minutes could be too long, because you might just start nodding off. So the first balance is to develop relaxation while maintaining clarity that you begin your session with. And this is a very anomalous form of attention. It's not taught, it's not cultivated. And normally when we are aroused, we are tense, like air traffic controllers. And normally when we are relaxed, we are drowsy, like as in falling asleep at night. So we want to be simultaneously relaxed and clear, have a vivid awareness. And then we want to develop stability without losing that relaxation. And then we want to develop vividness without losing either the relaxation or the stability that we have developed. So find your comfortable position and relax the body on the exhalation. Release any tension, any pain on the exhalation. And then consciously choose your object. Direct your attention to the rim of the nostrils, the tactile sensations there, and with bare attention, just focus your awareness there, and then with introspection, return, try to recognize that your mind has become distracted as soon as it leaves your object, and then return over and over again. So you can relax and stretch if you need to or want to. Many traditions of Buddhism, and I think secular presentations of meditation also rely on this breath meditation exclusively. And this is the entire path, really, of meditation. And so the benefits are this chiefly or especially noticeable very quickly is this feeling of serenity and peace and calm, because we are stopping doing the ruminating mind. And so it's because the monkey can only look out one window at a time, that the ruminating mind, to the degree that we are able to really be single-pointedly focused on the tactile sensations of the breath, it gives the chattering mind, it applies the mute switch to the chattering mind, which what we discover is that when you stop the ruminating mind, what you discover, not really create, but you discover peace, serenity, and eventually bliss. So a very seminal, fundamental practice that you can spend years cultivating, and as you do, you ascend through what in some systems, most systems actually of Buddhism, is 9 stages of shamatha, where your mindfulness and introspection become more and more powerful, and you are just dealing with, as you progress through the different stages, you're dealing with more and more subtle forms of distraction and laxity or dullness. And so it's very fundamental, very basic, and it can be really perfected through various 9 stages until you reach the point. So you start out at phase 1, where you're just directing your attention to your chosen object and only able to stay there for a few seconds. And then finally you progress through the 9 stages to a point where you are able to effortlessly maintain the balanced mind of vivid, stable attention for hours and hours on end. So that one could, be the your entire meditation career, really, with, or at least your shamatha career, really focused on breath meditation. But that, for us this morning, that is the first of 4, and we're going to move on next to what Lama Allen calls the Dzogchen approach to mindfulness of breathing. And instead of 9 stages in our immediate lineage, there are 4 stages of progress through the development of shamatha. And the first of these is called single-pointed mindfulness. And the advice of Dujam Lingpa, who is the chief of this very short lineage of ours in Dzogchen, is that you first need to, it's all about noticing the difference between stillness and motion. And so you first discover the difference between stillness and motion, and then you develop simultaneous stillness and motion. And so this particular practice of the Dzogchen approach to mindfulness of breathing really helps to develop this first recognition of the difference between stillness and motion. And then especially in a little later practice that we'll be doing, having an experience of simultaneous stillness and motion. So really what we are doing in this approach to mindfulness breathing is we are following the Buddha's pith advice in the Satipatthana Sutta. And that is that he said, just as a potter knows that the revolution of his wheel is long or short, know that when you are meditating mindfully, that your breath, the rhythm of your breath is long or it is short. So the thing about knowing that the breath is long or short is that it's a cognitive experience, not a tactile experience. So now we have left the tactile sense and are going directly into the mental experience of knowing the rhythm of the breath as immediately, as preconceptually as a potter who is spinning his wheel knows that the revolution of his wheel is long or short. So it doesn't take words, it doesn't take any other sensory input, but you simply know the rhythm of your breath. And so we're going to be giving knowing the rhythm of our breath with only our peripheral attention. And what we are primarily focused on, so let's just say 80% now of our awareness, because attention is selective, exclusive, and focused, and you're not going to parcel that out. But now we are really going to be meditating with awareness rather than attention. And so awareness can be aware of a number of different things simultaneously. And so what we're going to parcel our awareness to is about 20% of our awareness is going to be knowing the rhythm of the breath. And 80% of our awareness is going to be knowing the stillness and spaciousness of awareness itself. So this is really stopping doing what you're doing, what mental activity. You're just focused on stillness and spaciousness with the majority of your awareness itself, and then just peripherally knowing the rhythm of the breath, whether it's long or whether it's short. And so the progression here is that we apply the mute switch with focusing on tactile sensations, because if we don't first of all, master that, we're not able to settle the breath in its natural state. So the basic advice of Padmasambhava for these practices is that we are working on settling the body, speech, and mind in their natural states. And so the natural state of the body is relaxed, still, and vigilant. The natural state of the speech is effortless silence. And to get to that effortless silence of speech, meaning that the mental chatter has really been reduced to a point that you can remain focused without being distracted and going wandering with these compelling thoughts, is so what we are doing with that, I just lost the thought. So, yeah, some of you can relate. So anyway, we have, where are we? So we have what we're doing with the settling the speech in its natural state is to give up the distracting thoughts that are so compelling that we go wandering with them. And so Lama Allen has been very insistent in his advice recently that we really need to focus on applying the mute switch with the practices of breath meditation before we move on too quickly, so that we are basically just dealing with an overwhelming torrent of mental chatter. So we want to be able to reduce the flow of the mental chatter from a waterfall that we're standing under to more of a manageable flow, so that we can actually see space and recognize space between the arising and dissolving of one thought and the arising and dissolving of the next thought. Yeah, so something to just really bring a precise stop to. So anyway, now that we have mastered breath meditation with our first 6-minute practice, we are able to begin to discover the stillness of the mind, where, like, the gaps that I just experienced between thought become more and more pronounced, and where we can really see that it's like this space of the sky is what we are really resting in, and that the rhythm of the breath, which is the movement, are like clouds passing in the sky, something like that. So let's resume our practice with another 6 minutes. And so here, again, it's relax and settle the respiration in its natural state, meaning that you don't try to control the breath. Some traditions say that your exhalation should be twice as long as your inhalation. But here in this practice, what we do is we just allow the breath to find its natural rhythm, and without forcing it, without constraining it. So settle the breath in its natural state, and then you'll begin to discover the natural state of the mind in this open spaciousness, the stillness of the mind. And notice the difference between that stillness and the movement of the rhythm of the breath. with that practice, we are really beginning to recognize the difference between stillness and motion. And in many of the presentations of the progression of shamatha in this tradition, next would come taking the mind as the path. But I would like to introduce now what is often thought of as a culmination of the practice, which is awareness of awareness. So this would be shamatha without a sign. And the reason to, I think, introduce that now in the third practice is that as with relativity theory, motion is noticed from a reference point, or you can only determine motion from a reference point. So if you are on an asteroid or riding an asteroid towards Earth, is the Earth approaching or are you approaching the Earth? You can't really say from your reference point, it looks like Earth is approaching you. But so you need some reference point to determine motion. And so what we're going to do is to really become familiar with total stillness so that when we do the final practice, then taking mind as the path, that we will really be able to see the difference between stillness and motion and be able to have a simultaneous experience of stillness and motion, or begin to approach that, or have an aspiration for that anyway. So with the taking the mind as the path, or awareness of awareness, what we are doing is just stopping doing again, but stopping doing all mental activity and just resting in the nature of stillness and spaciousness of awareness itself. So it is just not being cognizant of anything at all, except resting in what is left over when you do that. And you are aware of the sheer luminosity and cognizance of awareness itself. So that is just going to be our object of shamatha, is this cognizance and luminosity of awareness itself, which is a spaciousness and a stillness that we are going to experience. And then when, again, introspection alerts you that your mind has become dull, because our habit is, because of the amount of constant stimulation that we have, whenever there is no stimulation and we are just resting in awareness itself, the mind can think that, well, there's nothing to do, so it's time to fall asleep or become drowsy. So what we are trying to do is to maintain this vividness of our awareness, and without giving it something to make it vivid, without focusing on an attractive or compelling object. So just recognizing the inherent, or the nature of awareness itself, which is this non-conceptuality, luminosity, and bliss, which you may experience as well. So let's just jump right into that. And again, the point is we are really still working in single-pointed, this stage of shamatha called single-pointed shamatha, meaning that we are trying, first of all, to recognize the difference between stillness and motion, and then later have a simultaneous experience of stillness and motion. So with this meditation of awareness, we are becoming very aware of the perspective of stillness. So you may have noticed that there were still thoughts arising in your mind, that you weren't able to just rest in cognizance and luminosity at this point, perhaps. So what is the approach then when you recognize that with introspection that a thought has arisen? What you do in the advice of Yangtang Rinpoche, one of the great teachers in our lineage, is that you simply note it. So just as like a thief who has appeared at the window of your house, you simply note it, and you will, and hopefully then the thief will just withdraw because you have noticed it. And as His Holiness the Dalai Lama put it in a commentary on Dzogchen, he said that the conceptual or concepts that arise in the mind are not self-replicating. They require engagement. So as long as you don't engage a concept or a thought that arises, it is naturally going to dissolve. It will self-release. And so what we are doing with this practice of awareness is not engaging thoughts, but noting them as soon as they arise and then watching them disappear, self-release. So hopefully you get, with this practice, some sense of the stillness and spaciousness of awareness itself. And then that will really help with our next practice, taking the mind as the path, in which you are able to not only notice the difference between stillness and motion, but have some sort of simultaneous experience of stillness and motion. So with breath meditation, when thoughts arise, we prefer that no thoughts arise. And we prefer that our awareness or our attention be riveted single-pointedly on the tactile sensations of the breath. So we have a clear preference for no thoughts in the practice of breath meditation. But in the practice of taking the mind as the path, thoughts are not the enemy, or thoughts are not something that we prefer not arise, because mental appearances will always be arising. And the difference in our practice progression is how we react or what our response to thoughts are when they arise. So in taking the mind as the path, the critical thing is to practice without distraction and without grasping. So without distraction means that we don't go wandering with thoughts that arise, meaning that we remain in this perspective of stillness. We're able to watch a thought as it arises while it is present, and then watch it dissolve again. And as His Holiness says, the thought is not going to be self-replicating. If we don't engage it, we can have that fascinating experience of watching a thought actually dissolve. And most of the time, we probably don't do that, because one thought is compelling. We either feel aversion for it, meaning that it's a painful thought or an anxious thought or a depressed thought, or something that an identity or a feeling of a subjective experience of a mood or something that we don't like about ourselves, a particular emotion. And we try to rid the mind of that. We push it away. So when we're doing that, we're engaging it. And so that then puts it on life support. And then we go wandering with that thought, with some story, telling ourselves something of the past or the future. And so we have lost our stillness of awareness to go wandering with the movement. So what we want to do is to practice without distraction and also without grasping, meaning that we're not distracted or go wandering with the appearances of objective appearances or appearances of outside objects, and we don't want to be grasping to subjective appearances. So the images of who we are, or experiences of emotions and things like that that seem like they are us. So we don't, if we can maintain our still perspective of not grasping and without distraction, that we can then watch mental appearances arise, abide, and dissolve. And then we may notice a gap between the next appearance arising, abiding, and dissolving. So this gap between appearances can become longer and longer as we maintain our stillness, so that eventually, so when we begin our practice, it may seem that all we really know are the appearances itself, just like the clouds in the sky. But as we continue with this practice, the reality of the sky itself, of space itself, becomes more real than the clouds that are passing through it. And so that can be the same experience with our mind, that the appearances that arise are there just temporarily adventitious. They arise, but we don't really own them. So the key to this practice is a radical impartiality, meaning that we don't reject or prefer that painful or unpleasant thoughts not be there, and we don't try to cultivate or grasp to pleasant thoughts and think that happiness really is just a matter of having nothing but happy thoughts or happy memories. So this radical impartiality of just allowing thoughts to arise, let them be. So instead of preferring, as in breath meditation, that there not be a thought, we just let them be. And we maintain our perspective of stillness, and we are simultaneously experiencing the movement of thoughts as they arise, as they abide, and as they dissolve. So our basic stance towards these appearances is, as in the Tibetan aphorism, let your mind be a gracious host, welcoming unruly guests. So let's give that a try. Experience this radical impartiality. Experience the simultaneous stillness and motion, the stillness of your awareness, the movement of your thoughts, without grasping to them, without being distracted by them, without going wandering. But if your mind does wander, let your introspection note it and alert you as quickly as possible, and then return to the stillness of your awareness to watch the next thoughts arise. Well, I hope this brief excursion and introduction to 4 different types of meditation practice in the shamatha tradition has been helpful or will benefit your practice. The question may arise, which of these practices should I be doing? And how do I know which one? So you might ask just as well, which is the best gear on a bicycle? It depends on the terrain, whether you're going uphill or downhill. And so if your mind is just filled with rumination and discursive thoughts, it could be that doing breath meditation and really applying the mute switch with tactile sensations might be best. And definitely reduce the flow of conceptual activity before you try to do some, at least settle the breath in its natural state to a degree before trying to take the mind as the path, because you'll just be overwhelmed by thoughts and go wandering with them. And I think that is probably an experience that many long-term meditators kind of find on the plateau, is that basically they are not able to have a experience of simultaneous stillness and motion, but it's just all wandering. So as Lama Allen says, know where your center of gravity is for your experience and work on the appropriate practice for that. But then also make forays or excursions, explore the other practices as well, just to keep your practice alive and fresh and dynamic. And also important to mention that shamatha practice is not an end in itself. As Dujam Lingpa has said, even the achievement of shamatha, with that, you have not advanced one hair's breadth towards liberation. So it has a very important role. It's essential but not sufficient for entering the path to liberation. And so what we are doing with the shamatha practice is developing what Lama Allen calls the contemplative technology. And so we are developing, as Galileo did, the telescope, the technology to really begin to do then, once we have developed the technology, we can really do contemplative science. And that's what the point of shamatha is to make our experience of vipassana practice really investigating the nature of the mind and how the mind relates to our experience of reality. It's intended to make those insights that we have stable and powerful so that they really can transform our perception of the world. So I hope we still have time for some questions. So if there are questions here in the room, or can people send your questions online to the chat room, and Courtney will read them. Any questions? Yes, Nick.
You're talking about the awareness part. I find, like, in my experience, thoughts will arise, and they feel like it's like a conceptual space with they arise within, and is that just more conceptual reification, or is that just phenomenal experience, they arise within a space, and that's the feeling, or is there is no space conceptually? Is that just something that I'm doing in my own?
Well, I think first of all, the experience of space isn't conceptual, but that your experience of thoughts arising and appearing within that space is exactly what the practice is. And so as Dujam Lingpa said that in one of his autobiographies, you watch thoughts arise as a herder is watching his yak. So you want to have the distance from the perspective of stillness, and then just without preferring that they stay or go, you're going to see these arise within that space. And I think you can really get a perspective on that also from really plumbing the gaps between thoughts in taking the mind as the path. So the experience of space, certainly, and stillness, all of our meditation practice can be a conceptual experience. But that's not the goal of the practice. So the goal is to rest in that non-conceptuality, the luminosity, and bliss of substrate consciousness. Samana, can you unmute, please?
Okay, thank you. The teachings are very helpful. I appreciate, all these great teachings. I have a question on the first technique for the breath. Does it have to be, or is there a benefit to doing the sensations by the nostrils? Because I find that very subtle, especially because the breath seems to get very quieted during sitting. And I find it more useful or easier to focus on just the rhythm and the feeling of the breath in the belly. But is there a benefit to using the nostrils as opposed to the awareness of the breath in the belly?
No. So what you're doing with both practices is focusing on tactile sensations. So the technique of focusing on the rise and fall of the abdomen is the approach of Burmese forest Buddhism, typically. And so that one I find to be more subtle, actually, than the sensations of the breath at the nostrils. But either one of those really is working on the same practice, meaning that you are focusing on tactile sensations of the breath, and the advantage being that the breath is ever changing and so a compelling experience.
Okay. Can that also be partnered? I practice Tibetan Buddhism, and I've been instructed to use like a visualization of a flame underneath the belly. I mean, can I be combining the two as far as that technique goes?
I don't think so in shamatha practice.
Okay.
So we are doing some practices, a 3-month series of teachings with Drupad Lama Karma right now, and he has been emphasizing that you don't want to be doing any other practices, Vajrayana, Mantrayana, reciting mantras while you're really focused on your shamatha practice. So I would say that as you can do your inner fire practices in the appropriate context as part of your daily practice or whatever. That probably doing visualizations is just it is a form of conceptuality.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for your question. Sati, please unmute.
Oh, hello, Doug. I'm Sati from the Netherlands. I just want to first, hi. I just want to say thank you so much. That was such a pleasure to hear you, and everything you said was just so beautifully said, and the way you guided us. So I really, really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. So thank you so much, first and foremost.
Thank you.
And I love the way that you said that we can, we don't have to do 24 minutes. We can keep it short but frequent. So I do really value that for myself throughout the course of a day. The idea of doing, short sessions of 6 or 12 minutes really kind of opens up the world further to me, the world of meditation, that is. So most appreciated. When you talk about the 9 stages, because we've just looked at the very early stages of that, I'm just wondering if for most of us with our daily lives, with the jobs that we lead, etc., can we follow that path towards shamatha and those 9 stages if we are doing these incremental steps, these short bursts of meditation throughout a day? When I can't be a long-term contemplator or contemplative, but I can certainly focus on discipline to practice more frequently and more regularly.
Right. So thank you for the point about the value of 6 minutes, because I think that we all experience 6-minute increments during our day, 6 minutes before the next appointment, 6 minutes waiting at a traffic light or something like that. And that we have a choice at that point of what to do with that 6 minutes. So we could, and I think probably what most people in the developed world do, is pick up their smartphone and check social media, sports scores, or whatever, send a text, an email. But I think that it's very helpful to, with these 6-minute sessions, to realize that this could actually be valuable meditation time, as you expressed. So can this lead to shamatha, 6-minute sessions? Probably not. But I think what you hinted at also was that in order to really make progress on a spiritual path of any kind, that one of the things that is really essential is to make decisions about our lifestyle. And so are we going to kind of follow the stream of what our culture is really leading us to, which is constant stimulation? Or are we going to swim upstream and recognize that the benefit for my mind and training my mind and my experience of the world and my cultivating my own happiness is really in making what could be difficult lifestyle decisions? And so that is, how much do I work? How much time am I setting aside for meditation practice per day? Does practice become the most important thing? And as I think of in what is called the conative aspect of practice, meaning that our motivation and our intention, do we actually have a purpose and a sense of meaning and purpose in our life that draws all the other aspects of our life into orbit around it? And I think that's what we all really long for, is to have such a powerful purpose that basically all of the other decisions about our life are kind of made in reference to that chief goal. And when we have that goal, then I think that what we're going to be doing is finding more and more time to practice shamatha. And Lama Allen has said, and I think this is probably, here at a meditation center with people in long-term retreat, some have been in retreat for 3 years now. I think this rings true to me, that Lama Allen has said that you can probably achieve something like stage 3, maybe stage 4 of the 9, meaning that basically you are on your object more than you are off, let's just say in a half-hour session or 24-minute session. So most of your stage 3, you would be on your object more than 50% of the time. But so you can do that with what he calls meditation practice of hygiene. So the hygiene is like brushing your teeth. You don't get extra credit for that, or think that you're really, that's a workout or something like that, that you're improving your health. That's just basic hygiene. So meditating for regularly on a daily basis is hygiene. And at some point, is this going to have enough gravitational force that it's going to pull all of the other decisions about your lifestyle into orbit around it? And then at that point, you may decide that this is so important that I'm going to go into a long-term retreat or retreat of some sort, starting with a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever. But it just becomes, I think, to really get to the point where you can really have transformative experiences that are stable through your Vipassana practice. To develop that contemplative technology requires a commitment.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay.
So this is from Martin. Would you say conceptual implies a label or language? Can you recognize a tree as a tree without using the label?
Yes. So there are various forms of conceptuality. And so one of my favorite subjects, actually, or a class to hear or to teach, is how samsara comes into existence, that Lama Allen teaches based on the teachings of Dujam Lingpa. So without going into the whole schema of that, which is really fascinating and is definitely worth some classes on that. But there is coarse and subtle conceptuality. So basically the devolution of consciousness would start with the from substrate to substrate consciousness, karmic winds move. Then there is afflictive mentation, which basically is the division of subject and object, so I and other. And then after that is subtle mentation, which is basically recognizing the difference between this and that. And Lama Allen describes that as like light being refracted through a prism. And so you can know the difference between a tree and then there's coarse mentation that comes after the subtle mentation, which then involves the full-blown conceptuality, which is language-based, and not only being able to recognize this from that, but giving it a labeling and telling a story about it. So, and then from coarse mentation then comes all of the mental processes below that and associated with that. So you definitely can have you could say that subtle mentation would be a subtle form of conceptuality in being able to distinguish this from that. And I think that one of the real powerful things that we can do when we are out walking is to just pay attention to how the sensory experiences are different from the conceptual experiences. And so, as Yangtang Rinpoche said, the first moment of experience is probably okay, as he put it, meaning that it is what you're doing is you're seeing truly or really with your sensory perception. But then almost instantly, then there is a conceptual overlay that is added to that. And so that conceptual overlay is where the language comes in, memories come in, desires come in, aversion comes in. But it is recognizing the difference between the first and the second moment, and then just practicing resting in that as well. So you can definitely have what probably are not. So in the Geluk tradition, only the direct perception of emptiness is truly non-conceptual. But we can definitely have degrees of non-conceptuality that I think are very useful to recognize and cultivate. And so any sensory experience, I think, is very helpful to delineate from the conceptual overlay. So I say, yes, you can recognize a tree without language. Okay. Well, thank you all online for coming. Thank you all Crestonian friends, neighbors, colleagues, associates for coming. It is wonderful to have you folks here in the chapel, and I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to talk about these things, because there's nothing I would rather do than meditate or talk about meditation. And I learn so much every time that I do try to express some of these beautiful and complex ideas. So I wish you all the very best with your practice, and I hope that you can come back to the 6th session of the Ghatika series, which will be about a month from now. So wishing you all the best.